We've learned how to create web pages, but what about websites? In this video, we'll learn how to create multiple HTML documents and link them together. What if we want a link to take us to another web page? Well, to do that, we need to actually have another page to go to. So let's go ahead and create a new page. And we're going to call this anotherpage.html. We'll go ahead and copy everything that we have in index.html, and we'll paste it into anotherpage.html because these pages are actually going to be pretty similar. Now, when you create anotherpage.html, make sure that it's in the same folder as your index.html. Otherwise, the links won't actually work. We'll learn more about that in just a few minutes. Now, on our index.html here, we'll create a paragraph, and we'll say our first page. And on anotherpage.html, we'll create a paragraph that says our other page. Or better yet, let's say another page to be consistent. And that way, we'll be able to tell them apart when we link them together. So let's go ahead and switch over to the browser and refresh the page to see where we're at. We have our first page. And of course, if we navigated to anotherpage.html, we'd see our second page. So far, so good. Now, let's go ahead and create a link between these two. To do that, we'll create an anchor tag here, and we'll call this my link, and we'll give it the href anotherpage.html so that it knows what file to link to. And when we switch back to the browser and refresh the page, you can see my link is there. And when we click it, it brings us to anotherpage.html. So by having two web pages here, we've made the leap from web pages to having a website, which is composed of multiple web pages. So let's go ahead and hit the back button on our browser to go back. And one thing you'll notice about the default styling that the browser applies to links is that once you've visited a link, it actually changes color from blue to purple. You can, of course, change these colors to whatever you want using CSS, but that is the default styling that the browser applies. Now, you'll notice that when we did navigate to anotherpage.html, we don't have any way to get back. And again, we shouldn't force the user to rely on the back button of the browser. We should give them a way to navigate between the pages of our website. So let's go ahead and try to fix this. We'll go back to our text editor, and let's go ahead and go to anotherpage.html, and we'll create a link here using the anchor tag, and the href will be to index.html, and we'll just call this my other link, or actually better yet, let's call this go back. We'll save that out, switch back to the browser, and refresh. And when we click, we now have a link on anotherpage.html. And when we click that, it brings us back to the index. Now, you'll notice up here in the address bar that we know that we're navigating to another page.html because it's actually changing up here. So watch that as I click this link. We'll click my link, and you see it changes to anotherpage.html. We can, of course, just go ahead and type in index.html, and it will take us back. Now, earlier I mentioned that anotherpage.html needed to be in the same folder as index.html in order for this to work. That's because we're using what are called relative links, which use relative file paths. In other words, the file paths relate to another document based on the current file location in the file system. So index.html is inside of this folder, and another page.html is also inside the same folder, so we don't need to really specify where else in the directory structure this file is. It's just in the same folder, so we can simply say what file we want because they're just adjacent to one another. That's sort of a complex idea, so let's try an example here. Inside of our links folder here, we'll go ahead and create another folder, and I'm just going to call this my directory. And I'm going to move another page.html into my directory. So now, when we switch back to the browser, refresh the page, and click on the link in index.html, we'll get this web page is not found, or something similar depending on which browser you're using. That's what's called a broken link. So let's go ahead and try to fix this, because we can indeed link to files that are in other folders. We just have to do something a little bit special. Now, what we've created so far are called relative links. So far, we've had to keep our HTML files in the same folder in order to link them together. In the next video, we'll solve this problem by learning about relative and absolute links.